Good morning. My name is Jonathan Schechter. I run the Chartour Institute, and welcome to the 7th annual 22 and 21, the State of Our Community. For those of you who are not familiar with the term, the idea is a play on County 22, on Teton County's license plate, and talking about the 22nd county in Wyoming in the 21st century. We started in 2012. The idea was that we wanted to give people a chance to come together and think about the broader future of our community in a more thoughtful, systematic way. And over the last few years, 22 and 21 has developed into a forum for local officials, our federal land managers, and our local elected officials in the region to give a State of My Jurisdiction speech. The President gives a State of the Union speech annually. The Governor gives a State of the State speech. But there was never one opportunity for the community to come together and listen to what our local officials, both federal and local government, have in common in what they see as the future. So the idea has morphed into presenting a forum for this. This year we're also going to add another twist on it, which is trying to take a look at some of the big issues facing the region over the course of the next several years. We have one of those we have an issue that distills an awful lot of the pressures and challenges and opportunities facing us in the lodging tax that Teton County, Wyoming will consider whether to reauthorize the coming November. So at lunchtime, we're going to also have a segment where we're going to have a discussion about the lodging tax. So with that, I guess the only other point I would want to make before we go into thank yous and getting into the formal program is that 22 and 21 is almost a misnomer. By that I mean that the way that I've come to see this region, and I think the way the region is coming to see itself, is we're really one community, the Greater Tetons community, straddling 2 states and 3 counties. And so in that sense, 22 and 21 is a misnomer in that it's not just about County 22. It's about the broader Tetons region, all of the communities that if the pass closes or if the canyon closes, we feel it all the way around. So that's what we're going to try to do today, is to focus on the larger future of this larger community. And before getting into the content, I wanted to give some thank yous. First and foremost to St. John's Medical Center, in particular CEO Paul Beaupre and Chief Information Officer Karen Conley. And they are helping underwrite today's event in order to keep it as open to as much of the community as we possibly could. We have kept the price as low as we can, so we're essentially breaking even on the cost of the event. But thanks to St. John's, we're actually going to put it over, so thank you. Are either Paul or Karen here yet? If so, thank you very much. If not, we'll share the love a little later. Secondly, to the Jackson Hole News and Guide, on your tables you will find a copy of the Jackson Hole Compass. And the Compass is something Chartour Institute publishes in conjunction with the News and Guide every year. And it's a socioeconomic snapshot of where the community is and where it's going. And as I say, we sort of see these as complementary pieces, the Compass and the State of Our Community session, because these are an opportunity for us to come to a common understanding about where the community may be going. And then finally, I'd like to give a big thanks to Snow King for helping us tremendously. Karen Smith, who is not in the room right now, is the banquets coordinator, and she's been a gem to work with. And Rob Benedict, sitting over here, who's handling AV, is similarly great. If you ever want to tour London or England as a whole, Rob would be a tremendous tour guide as a genuine Brit. And he has a company called, what's it called, Rob? No, the England Made Easy, yes. And it would be, so there's your shout out, Rob. Rob is videotaping these talks, and they will all be posted at 22and21.com within a week to give people who weren't here the chance to learn a little bit more about the state of their community. So a deep thanks to all those. sponsors. Now, a little bit about my organization, Chartour. Our focus is really on the concept of co-thriving. We as a human community in the Tetons region are thriving, and we also are lucky enough to have a thriving ecosystem around us. And the challenge for us, as I see it going forward as a community, is to keep both entities, the human community and the natural world around us, simultaneously thriving or co-thriving. And we have a 5-prong approach to this. We start with basic learning, and the Jackson Hole Compass is that kind of research and sharing it. We go into education, teaching through events like 22 and 21. We try to inspire people based on what they've learned in 22 and 21 and other things to go out and do some great stuff, and in particular act. And one of the focuses of our actions right now is an effort called Healthy Business, Healthy Planet, the goal of which is to have the world's economy become regenerative by the year 2050, being led by a number of major national businesses. And then finally, there's 1% for the Tetons, because great ideas die if they aren't funded adequately. And so through our 1% for the Tetons effort, we've put nearly $1 million back into the community over the last 10 years to try and make this a better place. So that's what we do. And what we've got coming up in the rest of this year are 2 additional 22 and 21s. In March, we are going to look at the state of philanthropy. Jackson Hole, the Tetons region, is growing and changing. And so in conjunction with the Community Foundation of Jackson Hole, we are going to do a session like this one, but looking at philanthropy. Who's giving, who's receiving, how are those patterns changing? What should you know about those patterns if you are either on either side of those equation? We're also going to do one on the state of our environment in May. The second thing that our second big initiative for 2018 is that just a couple of days ago, we signed a contract to do the first big data study of visitor patterns in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And so we will be launching that and going public with the results sometime in the first half of this year. Next thing we're going to be doing is a environmental equivalent or analog to the Jackson Hole Compass called, our working title is the Eco Compass, and the idea is working in conjunction with the federal land agencies around here, try to start getting a real baseline understanding of what the state of our ecosystem is. What is the health of it? We don't know. We have little bits and pieces, but we're going to try and bring it all together. Healthy Business, Healthy Planet, I mentioned. Our vision is a regenerative world economy by the year 2050. And then finally, we're going to continue to grow 1% for the Tetons. And I know there's some 1% for the Tetons members here today, and if any of them are here, if they could just stand up, I'd like to thank you very much for helping make this a better community. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Scott. So that's a little bit about what Chartour is. And about today, we have 14 different speakers. We have 4 federal land managers, we have 12 different speakers, 4 federal land managers, 4 town and county officials from the jurisdictions here, and then 4 other local officials. Invited but unable to attend were Kenneth Lutz, the mayor of Alpine. He fractured his ankle last week, and so he's not doing anything. And Mark Ricks, the chair of Teton County, Idaho's Board of County Commission. He wasn't able to make it. Cindy Regal, who is one of his colleagues on the board, said she was going to be here. I don't know if she's come over yet. There she is, way in the back. And also, as far as Alpine town government, Jeremy Larson is here, and he's one of the 5 council members. Jeremy, are you here yet? Oh, there you are. So thank you very much for making the effort to come up. We also have some other local elected officials in the room, and I'd just like to acknowledge those. The hospital's got some very strong representation today. Joe Albright, Scott Gibson, Bruce Hayes, and Mike Tennecan are all elected members of the St. John's Medical Center Board. And Joe, I know I see you there. I don't know if any of your colleagues have made it yet, but wait, Scott, whoa, look at that. They're all hiding in the back. We also have a couple of representatives from the U.S. Senators' offices. Pam Boline, actually, she just called me. She's Senator Barrasso's representative for our region, and she's deathly ill, and she couldn't make it over from Riverton today. Nikki Bruner. Nikki, are you in the room? Nikki's in the back, and Nikki is Senator Enzi's local representative. So thank you very much. And we also have a couple of other local officials worth mentioning. Gillian Chapman. Is Gillian here yet? Everybody's in the back. It's our superintendent of schools for another 5 years now. Congratulations, Gillian. And then Larry Pardee, who's about to be elevated to become our town manager. And I think the town of Jackson couldn't be luckier than to have you, Larry, so welcome. And finally, Tom Segerstrom, who is somewhere. He runs the Teton Conservation District, which is another one of our local elected boards. So, with that, and then I would be remiss, finally, I've got 3 of my board members here, Bill Klein, Mike Geraci, and Gary Trauner. So thank you all for helping make this possible. So, let me get on to what I would like to see are my thoughts informing what we're going to do today. I think it's, to put it mildly, we live in a period of adrenaline, of fight or flight, and reasoned discourse seems to have taken a back seat, in part because of the news cycle, in part because there seems to be a very easy, but I believe very destructive tendency on the part of many officials to try to demonize and destroy their opponents rather than accepting that we can have reasonable agreements and still be reasonable people. And I think if you add this stuff together and a lot more, what you're finding is that it's very easy to destroy institutions. It's very, very hard to build them up. And we as people need institutions. We need to be able to have things to come together. And we are in a very destructive cycle right now, at least on a national level. And I don't think that ultimately we will be well served by it. It scores cheap political points. It's a good sugar rush. But it's a very dangerous situation. And so my hope is that if we here locally in the Tetons region can do better than that, if we can model something, then we can lead from the ground up. Because it's not working very well to look to the federal level, to big sources of institutions for leadership. But I think we can do better. And what I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about why I think that's the case. Framing this are 2 concepts, 2 quotes, one from Dwight Eisenhower, who famously remarked that if he can't solve a problem, then what he tries to do is enlarge it. We in Teton County, Wyoming, have a bunch of problems. The same is true of Teton County, Idaho. The same is true of the Star Valley. If we think within our political jurisdiction borders, we're going to have a hard time solving our problems on our own. But if we can enlarge the problem, if we can think about it in a broader scale, I think we have a better chance of trying to address, of finding complementary needs, of finding ways to make things work. And the second quote is from John Adams. And he said this in 1772 when he was defending the people, defending British soldiers who had fought against and killed some people who were revolting in Boston before the revolution got started. And facts are stubborn things. And whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. And if you go back to the circle of things that we at Chartour do, we try to ground everything in facts. And so what I'd like to do is just share a few facts from the idea of the 3 pillars of sustainability. And if you think about sustainability, it's got the 3 legs of economy, society, and environment. And the reason that they're nested the way they are in this illustration is because the economy is really, it's very much dependent on what's going on in the society around it. And the society, in turn, is really shaped by the environment around it. And so if we look at all of these 3 things and we start looking about the facts about the economy, well, there's one thing about Teton County, Wyoming, as many of us know, we are the wealthiest county in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Our per capita income is roughly $200,000 in 2016. It will no doubt be higher in 2017 and 2018 thanks to the stock market booms. And one of the more striking things about it is that Shackelford, Texas, which has a population of about 930 people sitting on a whole ton of hydrocarbons, we're about 22% ahead of them. And so it's not just the amount of wealth we have, but it's the gap between ourselves and the next wealthiest counties. And if you look at it, these are the only counties in America where the per capita income is $100,000 or more. And we've got a per capita income of $200,000. From a societal perspective, we rank 23rd in the nation in terms of the percentage of college graduates among our adult population. And we are roughly double that of the United States as a whole. It's tough to quantify social capital, but this is the best indicator that I can find. What about environmental capital? Well, if you look at the 10 counties in America with the highest percentage of public land, what's really striking is that of these, very few of them have much national park land. Clark County, Nevada, which has about 11%, is where it's down in Nevada, and it's Red Rocks. It's not Red Rocks. The name of it escapes me right now. But Clark County, because it's where Las Vegas is, really isn't known for its wild nature, or it is known for its wild nature, but not in the natural sense. And of course, this graph is a little deceptive because what it doesn't include is us. And so not only do we rank second in the nation in terms of counties with the amount of public land, but we have nearly 50% of all of our land in national park, which, with complete deference to Tricia and to Brian Glassbell of the National Elk Refuge, the National Park Service is generally, those lands are generally considered to be the most favorable, if you will, of America's public lands. And so in terms of our environmental riches, it's something extraordinary. So if you add it all together, and I really come to two basic conclusions. The first is, I don't know that there's any other place in America or even the world that has our combination of natural, social, and economic capital. And the second thing is, because of that tremendous amount, I don't know that there's any place in the world where the gap between the level at which we operate and where our potential is greater. And my hope is that through sessions like this and through dialogue, we can start to close the gap between the level at which we operate and the potential. So, if you look at it in that sense, we've got a very vexing challenge, though, because on the one hand, we've got really two parts of a vexing challenge. The Industrial Revolution got going about 250 years ago in England. And since then, there's really been no advanced economy that has successfully maintained the health of the ecosystem in which it lies. And in that sense, I think we really have to ask ourselves a question. What kind of legacy are we going to leave? Can we figure out a way to continue our very, very healthy economy, at the same time maintain the environmental health around us? History is not on our side. I'm not anything but optimistic, but history is not on our side. The second vexing challenge is that we have big city challenges with small town resources. And here's an example of what I mean by looking at transportation. So these are the five counties in America with populations of 500,000 people or more that have more than one job per resident. And they have this because they are places where commuters come into. So New York City has about 1.9 jobs per permanent resident. This is Manhattan, the island of Manhattan. The District of Columbia has about 1.3 jobs per resident. Atlanta, San Francisco, Boston. So of all the big cities in America, these are the only five that have more jobs than they have permanent residents. If you if you lower the population threshold down to 20,000, Summit County, Utah, where Park City lies, they have barely one more job than they do have permanent residents. And what's going on there is that Salt Lake City is basically the place where all the wealthy people in Park City go down to work. And they have more people coming up the hill and from the surrounding area to work in all the jobs that the tourism industry generates for them. And so they're right there on the cusp. And of course, then there's us. We have more jobs per capita per permanent resident than do Washington, D.C., Boston, Atlanta, San Francisco. We have a permanent population of about 23,000. And the problem is that we've got these big city problems as far as people coming in to work here, but we don't have the scale. We don't have the mass to be able to afford public transportation problems that really make sense. And the interesting thing about public transportation problems, does anybody know where Butte County, Idaho is? Yeah, look, we got exactly 2 people. 3, oh. So Butte County, Idaho has more jobs per resident than any other county in America. Butte County, Idaho is 2 counties to our west. It's where the INL is. And so they have so many people working at INL that they can have a very, very efficient public transportation system because they have people coming in from the surrounding cities, but they're all going to one point. We have, in contrast, a very dispersed workforce coming in from a very bunch of different places. So these are the kind of challenges that we have the opportunity to try and figure out. But again, if we think about them in just the boundaries of Teton County, Wyoming, I think we're doomed to failure. So, a quick balance sheet. What are our assets? I would argue we have 3 of them. Exceptional resources, exceptional potential, and we're small enough to be nimble. On the liability side, we're really small. And that we're small with big city types of problems. And there are really very few precedents that we can draw on very effectively. So that's why we're here today. It's not enough simply to have data. It's important to base decisions on information, but we need more than just data. I think what we need is vision and values to animate those data. And we have a very clear vision, and it's stated in the first six words of the Jackson-Teton County Comprehensive Plan to preserve and protect the area's ecosystem. The next 15 words of that plan go on to describe why we want to do that. Because if we do that, we will ensure a healthy environment, community, and economy for current and future generations. That's our vision. What we haven't stated as clearly is the values that undergird, inform, and animate that vision. And we all have them implicitly, but we've never really stated them explicitly. And that's the reason the focus of today's session is on our core values. If we can start to flesh those out, if we can start to tease those out, then my belief is that we have a much better chance of really doing great things over the next several years. And so ultimately, though, what the community's values are a reflection of your values. And so with that, what I'd like to do is transition into some table exercises where I'll get each of you we're going to spend about half an hour to just talk about what are the things that really matter to you. And the goal of the table exercise is sort of based around, and ultimately where I want to take this by the end of the day. I was in here a couple of days ago for the Rotary Club session, and they have their 4-way test. Is it truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Does it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Where I hope we can be by the end of the day is for our different working groups to come up with something similar in whatever it is reflecting the values of our community.